Hello, friends. The woman I'm here for is Inez McCormick, a tall woman and a towering figure in the movement for civil rights in Northern Ireland. A feminist, a humanitarian, a human rights advocate, and one of the great peacemakers of Northern Ireland. She was the first female official in the National Union of Public Employees. She was the first woman to serve as an official of Unison, which is the largest union in Britain. And she was the first female president of the Irish Congress of Trade Unions. And you know what she said about all this? Well, there's no fun in being the first woman in anything. Inez McCormick's special joy came in representing the rights of the excluded ones. That's how she first came to union organizing. She was let go from a job as a social worker in West Belfast for daring to question the treatment of the most desperately impoverished people in her district. So she began a campaign to reevaluate the work of these people that she called the Invisibles. Most of them women, most in low-paid jobs, caregivers, custodians, cleaners. She became their advocate, their voice, their cheerleader, their champion, and their colleague. My relationship with Inez began the same night as my relationship with women in the world, 3 years ago, when the first summit opened with a play called Seven. Seven is a play comprised of the stories of 7 women activists, real people from all over the world who have put their lives on the line for disenfranchised people. And every word in the play is taken from the testimony of these 7 women, and it was my honor that night to portray Inez McCormick. As the first female to lead Northern Ireland's trade unions, Inez revolutionized the cause of equal pay for equal work, that radical notion that hasn't made its way over the ocean yet. And she was especially proud of her early fight for the women who cleaned commercial buildings. This is Inez from the play Seven. And one meeting, the bosses were talking about cutting the budget for cleaning and how that was essential for good finance. So I looked around at all of them, all the gray suits across the table, and I asked, does that mean that you're going to cut your pensions and your benefits as well? Because 100 of you costs as much as 10,000 of these women. And when peace came closer for Northern Ireland, Inez demanded that the Good Friday Agreement include explicit provisions for gender equality and human rights. This is again from Seven. What I would like to see in this Good Friday Agreement is some provision that requires any public policy to be tested with its impact on the most invisible. And secondly, that requires that the most invisible be involved in that measurement. So we all went out and campaigned for participation, and finally we got it through. Only through participation can rights be realized and kept. One day I was working in my Participation and Practice of Rights project with a group of women in North Belfast, and we're sitting round together in a small dark room in a community hall, and the sewage is coming up in the sinks. And these women, they've survived the worst, you know. And we're reading the Declaration of Human Rights out loud till we get to the word inalienable. And then I can hardly say it myself. It's hard to pronounce, so they all start laughing, and they think I'm saying alien, and they think I'm talking about outer space. And I said it's hard to spell, too. But what does it mean, anyhow? One of the women asks. That word, inalienable. Well, it means that the rights that we're reading about, they're part of every human being. Well, what do we have to do to get these rights? Well, they're yours, I said. They belong to you because you're a human being. And she looks at me, amazed. Well, that's the best fucking kept secret in the whole world, so I would say. 3 years ago, when Women in the World presented this play, 6 of the women portrayed in it were sitting in the theater observing us. And at the end, we asked them all to come up on stage. I know I speak for all of the actors in the cast that night to say that we were genuinely humbled, awestruck, and truly inspired by these real-time living heroines of our history. Listen to the real Inez now, speaking.
I've lived in narrow spaces, hostile spaces, and very unpopular spaces. I never dreamt that that would end up being immortalised in the New York play. It was about women in a place in history, in a time in history, asserting and standing up against what was wrong. We stood for the millions of women who stand up in ordinary lives against the brutal powerlessness in which most of the women on this planet currently live without them being victims, and they have never anyone to pat them on the back or say they're wonderful. Is it nice to be patted on the back and being a New York play? It's lovely. It really is. We go back to reality, you know?
Just 10 weeks ago, I'm sad to say, Inez succumbed to cancer at the age of 66. She died in her beloved homeland, Derry, Northern Ireland, surrounded by her daughter, her grandchildren, her husband of 44 years, Vinnie McCormick, who is here with us tonight. Where are you, Vinnie? Vinnie knows better than any of us the courage that Inez carried with her throughout her life, along with a powerful tenaciousness and a loving optimism and a belief in the strength of example. One life can stand for the benefit of many, but everyone must participate. Inez leaves us with a legacy, which is a prod to action, a call to arms, to link arms. Stand together with those who've been abandoned. Inez McCormick, her great heart beats on in us.